Money is that divisible object of exchange, the unit of which is commensurable with the value of every indivisible object. Thus it facilitates, or even presupposes, the detachment of the abstract value from its particular concrete content. The relativity of economic objects, which can be recognized only with difficulty in the exchange of indivisible objects, because each of the parties possesses, so to speak, an autonomous value, is brought into relief through the reduction to a common denominator of value, of which money is the most distinctive form. I have shown earlier that relativity creates the value of objects in an objective sense, because only through relativity are things placed at a distance from the subject. Money is the quintessence and zenith of these two qualities, and thus illustrates again their interrelationship. Money can never be enjoyed directly, the exceptions to be treated later negate its specific character, and it is therefore excluded from any subjective relation. Money objectifies the external activities of the subject which are represented in general by economic transactions, and money has therefore developed as its content the most objective practices, the most logical, purely mathematical norms, the absolute freedom from everything personal. Because money is simply the means to acquire objects, it stands by its very nature at an insurmountable distance from the ego which craves and enjoys, and in so far as it is the indispensable means between the ego and the objects, it places the objects, too, at a distance. To be sure, money abolishes this distance again, but by doing so, by transferring the objects to subjective use, it removes them from the objective economic cosmos. The division that has appeared in the original unity of the subjective and the objective is, as it were, embodied in money, but on the other hand, it is the function of money, in accordance with the above-mentioned correlation of distance and proximity, to move the otherwise unattainable closer to us. Exchangeability is the prerequisite of economic values, through which the latter attain their objective mutual relation. It unites in one act the distance and the proximity of what is to be exchanged. It has acquired in money not only its technically perfect means, but also a separate, concrete existence which embraces all its various aspects. Money as a reification of the general form of existence according to which things derive their significance from their relationship to each other. The philosophical significance of money is that it represents within the practical world the most certain image and the clearest embodiment of the formula of all being, according to which things receive their meaning through each other, and have their being determined by their mutual relations. It is a basic fact of mental life that we symbolize the relations among various elements of our existence by particular objects. These are themselves substantial entities, but their significance for us is only as the visible representatives of a relationship that is more or less closely associated with them. Thus, a wedding ring, but also every letter, every pledge, every official uniform, is a symbol or representative of a moral or intellectual, a legal or political, relationship between men. Every sacramental object embodies in a substantial form the relation between man and his God. The telegraph wires that connect different countries, no less than the military weapons that express their dissension, are such substances. They have almost no significance for the single individual, but only with reference to the relations between men and between human groups that are crystallized in them. Of course, the representation of these relations and connections can itself be regarded as an abstraction, inasmuch as only those elements in it are real whose mutually determined conditions we incorporate in specific concepts. Only metaphysical inquiry, which pursues cognition beyond the limits of empiricism, can possibly eliminate this dualism, by dissolving all substantial elements into interaction and processes, the bearer of which becomes subject to the same fate. But practical consciousness has discovered a form by which the processes of relationship and interaction, in which reality is enacted, can be united with the substantial existence, the necessary form of abstract Relations in practice. The projection of mere relations into particular objects is one of the great accomplishments of the mind. When the mind is embodied in objects, these become a vehicle for the mind and endow it with a livelier and more comprehensive activity. The ability to construct such symbolic objects attains its greatest triumph in money. For money represents pure interaction in its purest form. It makes comprehensible the most abstract concept. It is an individual thing whose essential significance is to reach beyond individualities. Thus, money is the adequate expression of the relationship of man to the world, which can only be grasped in single and concrete instances, yet only really conceived when the singular becomes the embodiment of the living mental process which interweaves all singularities and, in this fashion, creates reality. This significance of money would remain even if the value relativity of economic objects were not an initial fact, but a final stage of development. The concept with which we define a phenomenon is often not derived from the phenomenon itself, but from a more developed and purer form. We cannot infer the nature of language from the first stammerings of the child, and in defining animal life, it will not disconcert us to find that it is only imperfectly represented at the stage of transition from plant life. Similarly, it is only in the highest phenomena of our mental life that we can sometimes discover the meaning of the lower phenomena, although we may perhaps be unable to trace it in these at all. The pure concept of a series of phenomena is often an ideal that is never completely realized, the approach towards which, however, makes possible a valid interpretation of the concept. The significance of money, that it expresses the relativity of objects of demand through which they become economic values, is not negated by the fact that money also has other qualities that diminish and obscure this significance. Insofar as these qualities are effective, it is not money proper. Economic value consists in the exchange relationship of objects according to our subjective reaction to them, but the economic relativity of objects develops only gradually from their other meanings, and it can never dominate these meanings entirely in the total representation or the total value of an object. The value that objects acquire by their exchangeability, i.e., the metamorphosis through which their value becomes an economic value, emerges more clearly and strongly with the extensive and intensive growth of the economy, a fact that Marx formulates as the elimination of use value in favor of exchange value in a society based upon commodity production, but this development seems unable to reach its consummation. Only money, in terms of its pure concept, has attained this final stage. It is nothing but the pure form of exchangeability. It embodies that element or function of things, by virtue of which they are economic. It does not comprehend their totality, but it does comprehend the totality of money. In the following chapter one shall examine how far money in its historical manifestations does represent this idea of money, and whether money in operation does not tend, in some degree, towards another point of reference.